Good afternoon. Welcome. Chapter 10, Access Control Solutions for Remote Workers. As you know, the last year, pandemic, everyone was working from home. How did companies ensure that their workers were who they said they are? So this is what we're going to be covering this week, working from home, allowing employees to work remotely. This book was written last year, before all this happened, they couldn't have seen this coming. But everyone now has been working remotely. We're slowly going back. So it's a privilege. Now it's a necessity. So how do we, as a company, how do I make sure that whoever's logged in is who they say they are, that any data that we have sent out across the network is secure? And that's what we're going to look at. So allowing employees to work remotely is a benefit that organizations offer. If your organization provides remote access for employees, that means aspects of your network are remote as well. The corporate network now extends to employees' homes, coffee shops, airports, remote locations. Extending the network introduces new security concerns with the evolution of virtual private networks. Wireless network capabilities, network security, and solutions have changed to meet demands. So we're going to look at this. The chapter covers how mobile workforce has grown in recent years, which remote access methods and techniques are commonly used, which remote access protocols are strong protection, remote authentication, network authentication, VPNs, web, and best practices. So let's take a look at what we're going to be reviewing this week. So, the rapid growth in consumer and business technologies. Again, the last decade, our network has grown. High-speed Wi-Fi is available, cable Wi-Fi, Fios. Because of all this, we now have the infrastructure to work from home. A decade ago, we could never have achieved what we did this past year with the virus. So now we have the capabilities. Now, how do we protect everything? So we have, almost everyone has a laptop. When I travel, I bring my laptop with me. I can log in from anywhere in the world. A couple of years ago, I was in France on a vacation and I had some work to do. Turned my laptop on and I was working remotely in a whole different country. So this is the beauty of having this. But how do we secure it? How do we make sure that we have protection? Will the network access be granted to only employees and resource computers that we know, company-only employees, or can they use their personal? We talked about bring your own device to work. Well, this is kind of the same thing. Are we going to allow that, or we only allow our phones? What about our smartphone, or tablets? So these are some of the things that we have to look at. My wife just got a new job, and she's trying to log in from home. She needs a VPN connection. Because she doesn't have a company laptop, they won't give her access. So these are some of the rules and procedures that we need to look at and follow. So what are some of the techniques that we have that we want to look at? Whenever that happens, we want to make sure remote access connections usually remain open for the entire time. This may cause security problems, leaving connections open for 24 hours, even when they're not using it. When we use a VPN, it doesn't protect the computer system, it protects the data flowing at the time. So if the computer is hacked before they connect, well then that's going to allow them, whoever hacked that computer, it's going to get a direct line to our thing. So we need to make sure that they have, that the right antivirus softwares are installed on their computers and that they're taking precautions. Now, we still have to deal, just as we did with the login identification. What uniquely distinguishes that individual? Is it going to be a login, which is most common? Then we have the authentication process. Do they have access to that right? So now as S4R, I can access Cumberland's website. I can't do it as Sal or whatever else I try. It has to be that login and authentication that it's on there. Then the authorization occurs when I put in my password. Allows me to have access to that system. So these are some of the things that we want to look at. Authentication, authorization, and accounting. So 3, there are multiple ways for organizations to provide remote access, identification, authentication, and authorization through protocols. Some of these protocols add additional components that allow us. So the authentication provides a way of proving the user's claim of identity. This is usually probably, and as you know, Cumberland's moved to this. The use of multi-factor authentication offers a variety of authentication technologies. 2-factor and 3-factor authentications help us to make sure that it is. So it's not just your user ID and password, but it's also a PIN or token or biometrics. Authorization is determining whether a user has the right to certain actions. These actions may include commands of accessing internal resources. Authorizations cannot be that. And accounting enables the system to collect statistics on the network of the users for auditing and billing purposes. Accounting enables tracking the system's usage, start and stop times, what data packets were sent. So this allows us to have that extra layer of security. So remote authentication dial end user service, or RADIUS. This is a client-server protocol that provides authentication and authorization for remote users. RADIUSes also provide accounting capabilities. So there's a couple that are available. So RADIUS is a network protocol that provides communication between a network server, access server or NAS, and the authentication servers. Enterprise use protocols to provide network authentication for their users, internet service providers. So the internet, if you're working from home, you go through the remote access server, and then that will connect to the actual server. The RADIUS server kind of keeps everything separate until it's connected. And the RADIUS server can manage large numbers of users through a single source. So this allows us to have that. Logins and passwords. There's also a lightweight directory access protocol, which is the verification. So the RADIUS protocol works with the users provide authentication credentials such as an ID and password to the RADIUS server, NAS or VPN. The RADIUS client creates the access request and allows it. The access request is sent to the RADIUS. If no response is returned, the request is sent back. So this is kind of what it does. A shared secret in the case-sensitive text writing and validate communications between RADIUS and clients. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we have a remote access server, or RAS. This provides authentication for remote access to the internet and dial-up scenario. A user connects to the NAS with his or her credentials and compared with those stored in a database. If the credentials match, authentication has occurred, and the user is granted access to the network. Users and systems use remote access for gaining access to the system. It's necessary to implement strong security when using a RAS. Then we have terminal access control systems. It's a client-server protocol that was developed to control who can use dial-up lines. While we no longer use dial-up lines, it's a widespread technology, and successors live on many network applications. Terminal access control systems is a Cisco proprietary protocol developed to provide access control for routers, networks, access servers, and network devices via one of more centralized thing. Again, we have authentication, authorization, and accounting is built into that. The difference between RADIUS and Tactics, both provide the AAA capability. It is important to understand how the two approaches differ. Assuring the best protocols is provided for the best system. Remote access protocols. Password authentication protocol, PAP, is a data link protocol that provides authentication point-to-point protocol. allows the internet connection to occur over phone lines. Transmission of TCP/IP traffic over telephone lines is available through PPP. PAP provides identification or authentication of users when using remote servers. Network authentication protocols. Modem network basically requires the authentication before gaining access for both wired and wireless. 802.1x protocols provide framework for implementing that. The supplicant is the software running on the client that wishes to connect to the network. The authenticator is the network device that the client wishes to connect to, typically an Ethernet switch or a wireless point access. The authentication server is a server that validates requests for network access. The Extendable Authentication Protocol, EAP, is a framework that enables multiple authentication mechanisms over a wireless network. The VPN, Virtual Private Network. A VPN are ways for remote access, and probably one of the most common, access for employees to gain secure access to the corporate network. A VPN is a secure connection over unsecure networks, the internet. Communication security over VPN is provided through encryption. VPNs can also be used for secure communication between two network devices. A connection VPN software. A VPN establishes a private network over the public network, such as the internet, instead of dialing it over the telephone lines. A VPN uses an internet connection that the system has already established, as previously discussed. So it uses we're going to look at a couple different types. Transport layer security is the modem standard for VPN. This protocol has the advantage of working on almost every network it's being allowed. Point-to-point tunneling was developed by a group of vendors and standardized in 1999 and allows tunneling over the IP network. And encapsulates the packets so they can't be read. A security association, internal key exchange. These are some of the other things that we could be looking at. Web authentication. Web authentication is ensuring users are who they say they are through web applications. Web authentication is needed in situations where virtual private networks is not available. This may occur if a user has the secondary system such as customer computer. Usually an ID and authentication is required, maybe a one-time password. And then we also have knowledge-based authentication. Identification of web mechanism used in real time as a question and answer process. These questions and answers are obtained from public records or private data warehousing, such as credit bureaus. These questions consist of information of what is the license plate of your 1988 Toyota Camry and so on. These are personal things that no one would have access to. Best practices for remote access. Determine the security risk associated with remote. Everything comes at a risk. Is it worth having our employees work from home? Obviously, this last year, yes. Select a remote access option that addresses security needs. And we do have to keep the price and availability of what we have. Determining appropriate level of authentication based on security risk. We want to ensure that the systems that are accessing a network meet the security policies and organizations. Ensure protection of the system that remote workers access. So, a summary. This chapter focused on technologies and securities considerations of remote access solutions. There are many security risks associated with these implementations, which can be addressed with the right protocols and access controls. Employing a AAA framework can help ensure a network is configured to support and choose chosen protocols appropriately. Using these capabilities will create access control solutions to make an organization more secure and productive for all workers. The appropriate solution, such as a radius, depends on the risk associated within the environment. You must identify the needs and requirements of your organization and compare them against available protocols to choose the best solution for you. Thank you.